You're listening to PDR Tool Talk, all about PDR stories, tools, and techniques.
For the thousands in attendance, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the PDR Tool Time podcast, coming to you with Daniel Grom, Vince D'Alessandro. Mike, he is off at a bachelor party wedding, no, he did the bachelor party, now he's at the wedding. And
wedding rehearsal, right? Or
No, I think it's the wedding.
oh, it's the
Big
wedding
day.
thing? Okay.
Yeah, man. You know, it's funny because we were going to do the podcast on Thursday. We're actually recording it on Saturday, but I got sick for 2 solid days and just realized the day I went to the gym that I lost 11 freaking pounds.
That's the way to do it.
I know. I'm going to coin my own diet. It's called the saltine cracker diet. You can eat 11 or 12 of them a day, drink lots of water, and you will drop weight like no tomorrow.
You feeling better now, though?
Oh, yeah, man. I feel like a new person. I feel like I've been freaking reborn after going through that stomach virus.
Did you throw up?
I don't want to really talk about that, but you know what I'm saying?
Flush your system?
Well, the crazy thing is, guys, I had to work here through the whole thing. So I actually had to come in and work. That's the thing about being a business owner, is that we don't have the luxury of last minute, calling off. And I really wanted to call everybody and say, hey, no. But ended up here. I had people coming in from distant lands bringing their cars to me, and that just kept me here. And I had cars from the day before, So speaking of that, I know, Daniel, we want to touch base with you, my man. You're back in business. The fires died down. Let's hear a little bit about what's happening there in your shop after the big fire.
Well, the night before last, we got a rain, and it was like, firefighters were dancing, man. I mean, it was fantastic to see the rain come. So it damped down all the fires. I think we're all at 91% contained. I don't know why it wouldn't be 100, but that's what they say on the news. So things are good. It just kind of washed away everything, cleaned everything, kind of gave us a new leaf on life, and lease on life. Thanks. It's early in the morning right here. I'm drinking my coffee, so just trying to get in the groove of things. But things are really positive. I drove by our fairgrounds, and the whole place was packed with firefighters, and these guys are sleeping in tents. I mean, it looks like tent city there. Hundreds and hundreds of fire trucks and support people, and then crowds of people were coming out, just lining the streets with signs saying thank you. Kids, teachers, everybody was out and showing our thanks to everybody. I mean, we got policemen from all over the state, firefighters from all over the state. It's really neat to see all the different counties that came up here to help us out. So I want to shout out to all our firefighters and first responders. Hey, thank you for coming and supporting us.
Just to give a perspective on it, over 10,000 homes and structures were destroyed up there in Santa Rosa, California. That's 10,000. That's a lot of homes and structures that have been destroyed. It's crazy.
Yeah, it totally is.
That's like bigger than a little town that I lived in. Literally, that's like more population than I think the town that we lived in back in the day was. We moved out to a suburb farm town. There was like 5,000 people or something like that lived in that town. So I couldn't even imagine. That's like us destroying a whole suburb. I mean, this place had their own schools and everything like that, like destroying an entire city. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Something you mentioned, though, Daniel, I want you to speak a little bit about, you talked about this before the podcast, about how your business is still doing good because the community is in that vibe of supporting local businesses and keeping their money local.
Yeah, a lot of people have come in and just saying, "Hey, just want to see how you guys are doing. Just want to support you. We want to, do business with you to keep you in business." And the turnout's been fantastic. And everybody's got this attitude of gratitude. The people that lost their homes, they're grateful that they have uh, their lives, and the people that um, didn't lose their homes are grateful that they didn't lose their homes. And when you're walking into stores and just walking around, people are saying hello that normally you just walk by and wouldn't say anything. And it's a different vibe. It's hard to explain. It's really neat.
It's strange how tragedy brings people together. The same thing happened after 9/11. New Yorkers have
Yeah.
an attitude to them, and after 9/11, everyone kind of came together. We eventually went back to being assholes, but I'm joking, of course.
Yeah.
We love our New York people.
They talk about like tornadoes tearing apart land just to renew and build it as new. You know what I mean? So sometimes a tragedy like that will tear apart a community to renew it and build it as a new, you know what I mean? What you're seeing today, all that gratitude and stuff like that is really good for people. I mean, I don't care if you're sitting in a trailer right now. If you got ears to hear this, you could be grateful because there's people out there that can't even hear this, right? I mean, if you got legs to walk, there's always something to be grateful for. It's amazing. And it almost takes like a loss of something before we realize what we actually have and what we can be grateful for.
Yeah, it's too bad it's like that, but that's the reality of it, isn't it?
That is, man. I spend some days, I'll be sitting around for 2 or 3 days and, I'll be like, I don't even think I was thinking I was grateful for one freaking thing, because you're always thinking the future. As a human, you always want more. But sometimes you got to sit back and just realize what you got is amazing,
Sure.
That's the secret to happiness is an attitude of gratitude.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So that's
And
awesome.
Speaking of giving back, the big event is here. This will be dropping on Tuesday, and everyone will be coming in on Wednesday night and Thursday. What's going on with that, John? How's things coming along?
So y'all know what's up. The mega media event is going to be dropping next week. Actually, our next week's podcast is going to be recorded at the mega media event, which is going to be awesome. I mean, all kinds of people are coming from all over. Of course, the event's sold out. So me and Mike have been hustling diligently, getting everything prepared, getting the layout done. And we actually just got our Mega Media Action Guides in, which is a really cool book. And it is the most cutting edge advertisement and marketing system that this industry's ever seen. It's going to be taught there on how to use it, how to emphasize it. It's something new. This isn't your old sit and wait approach to marketing. This is a attack version of going on war and on attack to get your customers in your doors. And so we're going to be presenting that. Daniel Grom here is going to be presenting Motorcycle PDR. Vince, I think you got a real nice itinerary there. Whatever you wrote out on that thing was pretty elaborate. I think that's you that did that, right?
Yeah. I worked on that a little bit. We're going to be talking about shop talk and things like that. And I invite both of you guys, if you're not busy at the time, to come over and give your input. Obviously, you guys know a lot about having a shop. You guys had one longer than me. So, yeah, I encourage anyone that has a shop to come over or thinking about getting a shop and sit in on my seminar. You know what the crazy thing is, guys? Have you noticed that all of a sudden shops are popping up left and right? Guys are really jumping in.
Not only that, really nice shops. I mean,
Yeah.
like whoever, I can't remember who it was on
Van
Facebook.
Winkle.
Yeah, Van Winkle. Okay, was that Greg Van Winkle?
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah,
Dude,
Greg's a great guy.
Dude laid down probably one of the sickest shops I've ever seen. I mean,
Yeah. In Arkansas.
in Arkansas. And but anyhow, we're also going to have Mobile Tech RX out there. They're going to be speaking. Paul Corden's going to be speaking. Let me think here. I don't want to forget anybody. We actually have a Facebook Ninja Guru that's going to be speaking there. And, of course, got all the exotic cars lined up, a high-end American muscle car lined up. Photographers, all that great stuff is going down. It's crazy. And on Saturday, we're going to have the best street tacos truck actually come to the Mega Media event and cater in some Mexican style down the closest you can get to that border of Mexico and San Diego. All right, we're gonna have some authentic Mexican, street tacos. So we lined all that up for Saturday, and y'all get ready because Saturday night I might be wanting to get rowdy. Who knows?
Yeah.
John's off the wagon, so you might have to shove some tequila down his throat and see what happens. We might get a naked man running through the hotel or something.
Good God, hey,
Down the street.
I don't know.
Down the gas lamp district.
I don't know that would hurt my image, Jenny. To be honest with you, I think it might strengthen it. So,
and it's kind of allowed and encouraged out here in California. So go for it.
Yeah, people won't even notice you, really.
Yeah, just another Pete guy on PCP. Oh man, so that's what's going down, y'all. So
a little bit of old news too.
I kind of want to see if I can take you to a tiki bar down there. If we can get down to the gas lamp district.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm down, man. I'll Uber that, man. I've been Ubering everywhere.
There you go. Yes. Oh, okay. So just to touch on one thing, Mike Toledo did announce that he will be doing the PDR College seminar. I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys.
Oh, hey, Shane and Keith are going to be down there too at the event.
Yeah.
And
Shane
Anson.
Keith are coming.
And Anson. Oh, Anson's going to be giving gift bags to all of our attendees as well. Holy shit. See, I always forget somebody. But they're going to be giving gift bags. The hookup, man. Unbelievable. Go ahead.
Yeah. I wonder if everyone's going to get we got a pretty elaborate, swag setup. I'm not sure if everyone in attendance is going to get that.
I would doubt that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Craig and Christina over there at Anson, they really hooked us up with a lot of good stuff. And for the PDR techs in my neck of the woods, if you're around, come over. I got a couple Anson shirts, extra ones. Come over, I'll give them to you. Say hi. Come on in.
Vince is just trying to get you dudes out there to take your shirt off for him. I'm just letting you know. So
yeah, not yeah. But yeah, just to touch up based on Mike is doing the PDR college seminar in Florida at Mobile Tech Expo. He's going to be doing a presentation on marketing. It is not really related at all to what the Mega Media event is. So don't think that if you're coming to the Mega Media event that you can't go to the PDR college seminar and not learn more things from Mike and everyone else that's at that seminar.
They wanted us to do it together, and unfortunately, I'm very saddened, but I couldn't do it this year. So they approached it. They wanted a John and Mike type duo, but I actually talked to Keith and guys. I just want to let you know I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to be a part of that event. But I run crazy online sales during that time, not only for the tactical brand, but for the Dent Trainer brand. We're setting up our booth and all that stuff. To me, honestly, and I had to explain this to Keith because I'm telling you, Keith tried to sell me. And when you try to get sold by Keith Cosentino, he grinded on me for literally a half an hour on the phone, and he was trying to find other common objections that I might have that he could attack, okay? So, he said, oh, come on, you just stand up there and talk about what you already know anyway. I'm like, dude, I really planned my stuff out, man. I couldn't do that, And so I had to politely decline that. But, man, I'm so stoked that Mike's going to be able to do it, and I'm going to be able to pick up on the other end of things. You guys are going to learn a lot from Mr. Mike Toledo at that event. So I'm proud of him for being able to do that. Maybe one year I can make it, but I got to get some sort of servant or something like that. Was that an assistant to do all this bull crap that I do? Because I do it all, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, your Mega Media event is actually an international one. You have some international people coming too. Ben is coming from Canada.
That's right. Australia. I think we got an Australia.
Benoit.
Yeah. So there's a shout out to Benoit if you're listening.
Hey, Ben, je te le suis à te le soir.
And bring some more, what is it, the maple syrup and that maple whiskey. Bring it on down. We'll take it.
Whiskey.
Yeah. So what's our topic today, guys? We're following up.
That is right. Last week we actually went into large dent removal, and we talked about a lot of techniques. However, we had to cut it, kind of short because the podcast was getting very long. And we wanted to move on to some of the finishing techniques and perhaps talking about some of the finishing tools that we'll use in conjunction with the techniques that we like to use.
Yeah, this is part 2 of that, how to finish a big dent. You know, we kind of really went into how to start one and that sort of thing. Now we have to go into finishing it.
And what tools we use for that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So anyhow, guys, I'll go ahead and head it off because when we're talking finishing, the very first tool that comes to mind are the Mark Zirkus rods. If any of y'all do not have the PDR Finesse Mark Zirkus set, that is, in my opinion, one of the greatest finishing tools for hail damage. Actually, start to finish tools on hail damage. But finishing tools on large dent removal that I've ever used. I would imagine that I probably use a tool in that set 2 to 3 times a day, just in daily repairs.
Now, which set do you have? Do you have it from PDR Finesse, or I know the Circus set is made by several different companies now, I believe.
Yeah,
not several, but a couple.
I've got the one from PDR Finesse, and I'm glad that I picked that one up because I don't know if you guys know this, but Mike got one from Dent Gear, and for some reason it was brittled to where he dropped it and the tip chipped off because of how sharp the tools are.
Oh dear. And
I'm sure, but I mean, they're out of business now. But
that's probably an anomaly because of heat treating.
Yeah.
My experience with heat treating, you will get one in 1,000 that will end up breaking.
And that's one thing that you do, like what Daniel said, you got to make sure that rod is heat treated properly, because them Zirkus rods, they're thin and a lot of them are really long. So if you got a rod that's going to be thin and long, you're going to need something that is properly heat treated, or else you're going to fight the bow in the center of the tool while you're trying to gain leverage and pinpoint, your little lows.
Now, also remember this too. If you have a tool like that and you heat it up to push through some glue and you end up cooling it off really fast, you will make it brittle. And that's one way it will break.
I do think so. And, Daniel, I use that tool everywhere, man. And on anything that has a sharp bottom crease, start to finish, on any dent, I'm going to use that specific tool. But one of the real things that I like to use in conjunction with any sharp tip tool when it comes to large dent removal finishing is what I like to call, it's a technique that I developed to train my students on how to really finish quickly and thoroughly. It's called mapping the dent, okay? Now, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but if you could imagine this, I want you guys to think about opening a map and looking at all the little roads running through, Let's say you're in Ohio and you got to get to Atlanta. There's all these little curves and contours, and there's mountains and there's lines and roads and all this. You're sitting there reading a map, but you literally got to go through that map to get from point A to point B to get to your destination, right? Well, a dent is a lot like that when you get to the finishing level. You really have to look inside of it and use natural reflections to identify which way and which direction the little minor creases and lines are going. So this way that you can actually line your light up appropriately and properly and actually follow it through the finishing procedure through the damage. So many people think it's straightforward. It's like, I put my light here, I check from this angle. I put my light there and I check from that angle. Well, it's not exactly like that, because that's why when people pull back, or I like to say eject out of the dent, and they start looking in the natural, they'll still see little lines that they didn't line their light up appropriately with. And I believe that's because they had a false read on the dent. In a sense, it's not a mechanical process. You have to look into the damage and map and see which way all the little lines and creases are going. And you have to line your light up parallel to every crease in that dent and follow it through the whole procedure. Okay?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and one of the things that I like to do too is I get out my chalk marker and I mark the ridge and the line and the high spot and the crown, because you're not always able to see it from the first angle that you're working on. So moving the light constantly, not constantly, but often enough, moving it back, catching the natural reflections off of things on the wall, or if you're outside off of a building or a corrugated wall, or even clouds will show you different reflections that are going to cause you to a flicker that you could go back and correct. And what I'd like to do is, like you said, mapping the dent. On large damage, I'll come with my chalk marker and I'll mark, okay, here's an area here. Here's a diagonal crease that I can't see with my board right now. I have to remember to move my board to go back and take care of that. And like we were talking last week, I still, like you had the analogy of filling a hole with dirt. You always go to the lowest spots. So that's when I start doing my finishing technique is really all about filling those low spots first and getting everything up smooth and consistent through the whole thing.
Yeah, that's especially true there, Vince, when you can only work on it from one angle. If you can't switch your body over to the other side of it, you're working on the edge of a door or something like that.
Front of a door where the door's open, sure.
And you definitely have to mark those lows and check it from the other angle.
Mm-hmm. And I think what people need to understand is the principle behind that is that when you use a line board or a fog board, if it's going through the crease, like not parallel, but if it's not lined up with the crease and it's shooting through it, it's just highlighting the whole interior. You can't even see it. The light highlights the whole inside of the crease. It would be like starting a crease, like if you got a crease line going down a fender and starting it with your light at the exact opposite angle, like an X, approaching it like a T, okay? But instead, you got to approach it more like an H, okay? You got to line it up with that crease because the light has nothing to catch. The only thing that we're seeing in our reflection pattern is the shadow of the light missing the two ridges, and that dark part in the middle is the shadow because it can't hit it. The light can't hit it. If you put it going with the dent, like going through a canoe, then it just highlights the whole interior, and there's nothing that you can actually use to contrast and actually see the dent.
A good example of that, John, is that yesterday I was working on a dent, and it was on the reverse curve. And if you looked at it, the one angle, you'd swear, oh, that's a good little low.
Yep.
And you turn the light to the other direction and you flip your whole body over to the other side and you look at it and it's an actual high.
Yep.
And that's the illusion that you get. Light's tricky, man.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like you literally have to look at them dents because it's the reflections bouncing off of each other because you're looking at the reverse curve at an angle. And the trick behind them is getting down. Like let's say you got a giant half pipe. You guys remember that, a skateboarding half pipe?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and let's say you had a giant one in your backyard. You'd have to be standing at the bottom of the U in the middle looking straight through it to actually see it, to actually see the dent appropriately. So your eyes have to be barreling straight down the bottom of that U, like standing on the ground. If you stand up on top of the half pipe and you're looking down trying to catch that dent, the light's just going to bounce off each other inside the interior, and it's going to give you that effect that Daniel's seeing there.
Yep.
Now, I've been stuck in positions where I couldn't get my head lined up with it. Have you guys been there before? Where you couldn't get your head lined up to see through it?
Yeah.
And at one point, I'm telling you, this takes so much Jedi mind power. It's freaking crazy. You have to imagine the high as a low and the low as a high. You're tapping the dent out or you're pushing the high out.
Yep.
It's the craziest mind thing ever. And in all honesty, it's really tough to finish out and get perfect. But usually you can get it to the point where, because it's in a curve, you can't see it any longer.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, Daniel, what type of tools are you using to generally finish a dent? John likes the Zircus set, nice and sharp.
Well, I think every area dictates the kind of tool that you're going to use. Basically, what John's saying is he's using his sharp tip tools. And actually, I think my most important tool is my knockdowns. And when I'm working on a large dent, basically it's a bunch of lows and highs all connected together. And what I like to do is I like to beat it all as down as evenly as possible. So I really utilize my knockdown, and I utilize different knockdowns. I use my VIP knockdown. I use my soft tips. I mean, I probably go through on a big dent. I probably go through at least 4 to 5 different type of knockdown tips, and I have each one set up individually, and that let the dent dictate which tip I'm going to be using. But I really try to knock it all down and make it one uniform low. And I think it's easier to uniform the dent that way than trying to bring it all up, because that's what I used to do. I used to try to bring it all up evenly, but I think it's easier to use your knockdown. And that's probably my most important tool. My second thing was light position, and having a 90-degree light position set up at all times. So I usually have my shop light vertically, and then my Illumident light horizontal, and at a 90 degrees, so I can shift my head and make sure I'm not making any drastic mistakes, and really trying to get the dent as evenly flat as possible before I start uniformly trying to bring it all up again.
Now, Daniel, tell us a little bit about the knockdowns you choose to use.
So the VIP is my go-to now. Of course, I don't use that if the paint is soft and it starts to put those little tiny divots in there, and it depends on the color. Sometimes those will show up more drastically. Then a peak tip. And I have, now I have all kinds of different actual knockdowns. We've gotten quite a few, and I'll switch depending on what. I don't really have a preference right now in those. It's more the tips that are important, and then a cherry tip if the paint is soft, or I want a nice soft. And then I have a larger R96. That's my large crown knockdown. Then I have an R96 on my hammer, and I tend to use that if the panel has some rigidity to it and it's stiff.
Yeah, Daniel, when you said soft paint, the first thing that came to mind was motorcycles, because I will not hit, rarely will I hit my motorcycle tanks with the VIP. And you're right, it's like one of the best ones on a car, but I just, the motorcycle paint tends to give that divot effect. It's thicker, like thicker paint or something.
Yeah, it's a lot more layers of clear on there because they have to clear over those decals. So it is softer, it will divot, and it does show up, and sometimes you can't wet sand it out.
Well, from my understanding, the early on Harley Davidsons up until maybe 3 years ago were powder coated, or they were literally
I think
baked.
The insides were powder coated.
The insides, maybe.
From my understanding, that they were all hit with paint and then baked. It was PPG paint. I had a factory worker here, and that's what he was telling me. But I don't know, could be wrong.
Yeah, I'd really like to talk to that guy. Pick his brain.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, like 99% of motorcycle tanks that I work on, they're getting color sanded, especially a Harley after I work on it. Because it takes a lot of force to move those crowns and work the dent.
Absolutely.
Where you're doing something to the final finish. Me personally, when I'm giving back a product, I'm trying to give it back 100% as possible, even with the finish. It's not like, hey, I fixed the dent, but now you got to go and have that color sand and rubbed out by someone else.
I polish out the whole tank, because every tank has got those jean scuff marks on the side of it from their jeans on the tank. And so I want to give back the tank so it looks like it's brand new.
Sure.
So I end up polishing out the whole tank in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good idea. So, Vinny, how about you,
Yes.
my man? Let's talk about your finishing technique tool.
Finishing technique tools. I like Daniel. I do a lot of knockdown. I do a lot of knockdown on big dents to before I'd like to just go in there and final finish something really quick. And sometimes you get those tight little lows. And I have a series of tips that I use, but they're all nowadays. There's so many tips out there. And we have a ton of them. I have tips all over the place. I have knockdowns all over the place, which is kind of nice because I have my mobile set up. I have my tray set up. I have knockdowns everywhere. And they all kind of...
the more the knockdowns, the merrier, dude. I can't tell you how many times I lose them.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah. But I really like when it comes to fine finishing where I don't have a Zircus set, but what I use is the Edgy Tools Gator Teeth, the really sharp one where I have to pull out those micro lows. and I know I'm gonna be color sanding afterwards because you're leaving little tips on there. But I mean, you could hit a gnat's asshole on it. You know what I mean? It's so fine and minute, and you're probably getting the same results with the Zircus set, I would think.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're not really poking it is the thing. Everybody thinks that if you get a sharp tip tool, you're going to poke it, but what you're actually doing is you're moving smaller increments of metal without the need to knock down around it. So again, we're talking about something we were talking about earlier is not lifting perimeter metal. So the smaller you get, the more metal you can lift without lifting perimeter metal. And
plus, you're shrinking it.
Right. And I'm right with you guys. I actually got a series of knockdowns that range anywhere from peak. I really like the Woody Cost 50 cal, or not 50 cal, the 308 smaller black peak knockdown. So I use them all the time. I got like 20 of them floating around my shop. And that's when I'm getting to the very, very fine detail like Vince is talking there. But there's also that time where I want something that's much more blunt, a blunt plastic, a different type of plastic. I want a plastic that has some give to it because I don't want that direct impact hit. I want to move metal without a divot or a dot. And it's important to be able to distinguish the difference and have knockdowns that are going to treat you differently. I think too many people get caught up in like, oh, peak is it, now that's all I'm going to use. Well, no, it has its place in your arsenal. But don't forget that some of that original stuff, that softer plastic, is really important.
I could tell you what I don't use more than what I use now because there's so many different peaks out there and stuff like that have come out, from Edgy Tools to Dent Technologies. I always tend to grab Dent Technologies because I think his peak is awesome.
Me
Woody
too.
Cost is dead on Dents. His match grade is friggin' awesome as well. But what I do notice that I never use anymore is a root beer knockdown. I never use root beer, and I never use a nylon knockdown anymore. They don't even exist on my cart.
The root beer scuff or something like that. I think the root beers, like, they attract dirt or something like that in the actual knockdown, and I'm always cleaning up after them.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, and like you guys, I'm using an R4 cherry tip when it comes to crowns and getting a nice, soft, bigger knockdown. And then I'm finishing with VIPs all the time. I like the new VIP that screws onto any knockdown shaft that you have. That thing's awesome.
So I got kind of like a secret knockdown I haven't told you guys about. Yeah, I'll have to show you guys. Actually, I might bring it out to the Mega Media event, but it is a PDR finesse. It really hasn't been talked about. I don't think a lot of people has bought it because it really hasn't been hyped up, but it was a plastic that Jerry Powell sent to Ike. And Ike had these things built, and then he inserted a steel rod in the back of them. So it's an interesting weight. It's well-rounded on the end. And, man, I'm telling you, I have never had to polish this knockdown for 7 months that I've been using it. It is the most phenomenal, what I like to call a mid-level feeling knockdown that I've ever put my hands on. It is insane. I'll have to take some pictures and do some posts about it and put it on the PDR Tooltime Revolution Facebook group.
Did you guys see the post I did, I think yesterday or the day before, the hammer? So the Dent Technology hammer with the VIP metal knockdown on it. So it's got like a rounded bull nose, but it's a really short hammer. I mean, not the handle part, but the head is really short. And
yeah, I saw you do that. You were hitting it with another hammer.
Yeah, so that's what I use for my extension. So when I want to get my sight way back so I can really see the finish of the dent. And that little hammer is fantastic because it's so short and it's got such a low profile. And here's my gripe about knockdowns. Guys are making them too long, in my opinion. And if you look at a knockdown, let's say you had a 10-inch knockdown. Would you ever try to use a 10-inch knockdown? No.
Of course, I hate it when a knockdown gets too long. It just
yeah.
You know where I do use them, Daniel?
Where?
In quarter panels, open access, when you got to rebuild that line at the bottom where it meets the bumper.
Yeah.
That's when it helps to have a long knockdown.
Yeah, but I'm talking about your general knockdowns. I think I end up cutting them down. I end up chopping the ends off if I can because they're too long.
Bench
That's-
grinder.
Yep, bench grinder.
All right, so going on to our next deal, I want to hear a little bit about you guys and your finishing techniques. What do you guys like to use tool-wise, Daniel? So tell me a little bit, and maybe go into a little bit of your technique, because I know that you were talking about, and I would like to talk about mine as well, when you're working on a door in an angle where you can only look from one angle or something like that. Like, how do you set yourself up for success when you can only check from one specific angle? And what kind of tools are you using behind there, like push tools?
Generally, I use my straight rods from Ultra, and I like his sharp tip. Everybody else's sharp tips are, they're bigger round. His are what size is that, Vince? Do you know?
Ultra. I'm not sure.
His little sharp tip that he has. It's not. It fits on his regular rods. This.
The sharpest tip that he has?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it's called. It usually comes in a set of tips when you get the interchangeable tip set.
That's actually my favorite sharp tip.
So it's like your interchangeable on your interchangeable rods. You actually just kind of screw on the sharp tips and use them that way.
It fits through a freaking hole if you're doing something. It fits through a hole where everybody else's sharp tips are bigger round, and it won't fit nicely through that hole.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working on top of a truck bed and you've taken that top cap off and you have to bend that little slot up a little bit. It's harder to get those bigger round things. I don't know why they all do that, but they all seem to do that. But that
I believe Dave Streen has corrected it. When he gave me some prototypes, and I said, "Dude, you got to shave these down. They're too wide."
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So he's like, "Thanks for telling me now before I went into production."
Yeah, good. Yeah, he makes some great tips. But that's my go-to sharp tip, and that's what I use for most of my finishing if I can get a regular rod in there. Or I actually use a lot of my motorcycle tools, especially my bendable motorcycle tool. I mean, that thing is stiff. You can bend it into any shape you want and get exactly. And now we have the new extension from Ultra. It's a double bend handle extension. So it takes the handle away from the car and it gives you incredible leverage. The leverage is absolutely amazing. So you're not putting a lot of force on your body. You can use the weight of your body and just kind of pull back. That on my double bend, bendable tool is frigging outstanding. And I think I'm going to talk to Steve this week to make a little bit shorter one. We did a medium one as a prototype, and he liked it so much he put it in the tool line, so you can actually order it from Ultra. But I'm going to have him make me a shorter one too. But that right there, especially on fenders, it gets you away from the tire, and you have tons of leverage. It's unique in some of the tools. And then if you got a long tool, you can actually do the behind the back kind of pull, like you're doing the behind the back pull shot. Have you guys ever done that on a long tool?
Oh, yeah.
This thing will wrap around your waist now. And so you can actually grab it with your hand without contorting your body and do that whole thing. It's awesome.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because I found myself later on, didn't even realize that I was doing this, but there's things that we do to save our body once you become better at PDR that you just start naturally doing. Okay. And one of them things is when I'm working inside of a rear door and I'm going through the rubber wiring harness, there's a lot of times that I will tuck that tool right underneath my leg. And as I'm pushing, my leg is torquing the tool. Okay.
Yep.
And it didn't even dawn on me. It's like, I didn't even think about it. It was just my body correcting something that was probably going to go wrong in the future if I kept torquing my shoulder. So pay attention to that. Some of you PDR veterans out there, like when you start working a dent, pay attention to how much body leverage you put in your dent removal work. Now, for all you guys that are just starting, pay attention to what we're saying here, because you
Save
might
your body now.
Yeah, you might want to start thinking about learning how to lay body weight into your dents and stuff like that. Believe it or not, actually, what really got me thinking about that was when I started studying Toshindo. And the big thing about Toshin Do was, you guys know when I was a ninja. Look, is that everything was using your body weight, okay? So it's like old people could fight as hard as young people because if you were using muscle, it was wrong. And I started thinking, I was like, how could I apply that to paintless dent removal? Because that would only serve to benefit my body in the future if I wasn't torquing my shoulders or out of line. So I started trying to do things that was like centering your body. I want you guys to imagine this. Get down on the floor and do a push-up with one arm. Try to do it without centering it in the middle of your body. Keep it off to the right, okay, and try it. You're just going to fall over, okay? You're going to be eating dirt, okay? Toshindo was the art of learning how to center everything where your body weight was behind it. So think about that when you're doing your PDR.
I think you should do that, John. I think you should start a new martial arts.
Oh, I have been. Crystal, who
use PDR tools as your weapons.
Okay, yeah. Get this, Daniel. Crystal, who we've had on our show, and she's gonna be at the Mega Media event. She was pregnant when she came to me the first time for training, and I had to work on that with her because she's a very small girl and she's pregnant. So we had to talk a lot about how to put her body weight and to center it and all that stuff. So when I train, that's part of my training now, is teaching people how to save themselves and, let that body do a little bit of that work, man.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my tips that I use for finishing, I'm with Daniel. My go-to is my interchangeable tips from Ultra. I could start a dent with the chair rail tip that you put on. I'll take that cap off. I'll start with the big rubber one. I'll take the big rubber one off and put on the hard plastic one. I'll get the next meat of that out. And then I'll take that off and I'll use the ball tip and I'll finish a lot of it with the ball tip. And a lot of the times I could finish a dent with just the ball tip. But for those micro loads, then I will switch to the gator tip or the one that Daniel's talking about, the sharp tip, to finish it off. And that's what I'm using from behind.
Okay.
You know what? I got something new from Alligator Tools. I got a new tip from them, and it's just like Ultra's soft tip, but he gave me these plastic caps that are frigging hard plastic, and they're frigging indestructible. You have to wrap them with tape because they are slippery. So I wrap them with Tessa tape, but I'll tell you, I'm kind of grown on me to becoming my favorite soft tip because they're hard and strong and they're durable.
I got to be honest with you, with the Tessa tape, I found myself going back to gaffer's tape more recently. The Tessa tape is great and everything, but it's slippery and it does cut through on tools, where the gaffer's tape, there's friction to it. Your tool doesn't slip around as much, and it's more pliable and flexible that you could wrap it around your tips and not have to change it as often.
Yeah, if we can get gaffer's tape that had the same glue as Tessa, because it's the glue that sets it apart. It's heat resistant glue, and that's where it beats out gaffer's tape, in my opinion.
Well,
I have to heat up a panel.
I believe Tessa has its place in being a soft push where you're not going to get too much of a hole through it. However, I believe Gaffer has its place when it's anti-slip, like Vince is saying, because that stuff tends to have a bite on the panel, and the Tessa tends to be heat resistant, and especially when in conjunction with a ball tip or a bullet tip is where, in my opinion, it works phenomenal. And in conjunction, believe it or not, with the tip of a blending hammer, or if you're using one of my blending balls, you can put that Tessa tape on there, and it's like nothing. It's like you never put anything there, and it just stays clean and like brand new throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do that all the time.
And I think that kind of moves us to my next step in this process. I'm telling you guys that I couldn't even finish large dents without a decent long blending hammer, man.
Yep.
I mean, that is the finale right there, because you always step back and you see them little microwaves that are them crowns that are locked up that you may not even seen at the beginning of the repair. They just emerge as the dent unlocks, okay? Because they're subtle and they're on the edge, but as the thing starts to get level, you will begin to see these things appear in different spots. And when you drop your head back from a distance, you need something that will give you that distance where you can see and hit it and flow the metal back out to its original shape. And of course, you guys know that I'm using my tactical Punisher, typically the 18-inch version, the super light one with just the carbon handle, the ones that I just released. And I'm usually using that with either an aluminum, the aluminum blending ball if I want a really light touch, if it's light metal. If it needs a little bit more of a heavy hit, I'm upgrading to the brass blending ball, or I put a traditional blending tip on it, a steel one.
Yeah.
Oh,
I totally agree.
and Jeremy Langton has a flatty titanium that's insane.
That is insane.
Yeah, the Dent technology, I like it. It's only about this round as a quarter, but I keep that thing on the end of my blending hammer, man, and I flip it, and I use it to move big waves, and then I flip it to the blending ball to define, to hit the definition spots that need to be hit.
I love the way that that titanium works. I mean, I used to use brass knockdowns for years and years. And when I say years, I'm talking 10, 15 years I've been using a brass knockdown. And that titanium tip is friggin' phenomenal. I was using the Drew's Tools Flatty, and I barely grab that now because I'm using Jeremy Langton's, Dent Technologies mushroom about the size of a quarter. Like you said, that thing's awesome. And I'm using it on the Tactical Punisher or on the Dent Technology ones. Those are my two blending hammers now, besides my Craftsman hammer, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
I'm still with the Drew's Flatty. That's still my favorite one. I bought a second one just to have as a backup now because I'm afraid of losing it. But that's still my go-to, especially on like big panels. If you got a big truck door panel, and it's really flexible like a big drum. I find that works best on crowns in my opinion. But I do use the Deck Technology one that you're talking about. I have a hammer all set up, one of his earlier Dent Technologies hammers. I have it set up, and then I have actually a secret tip that I'll probably share with you guys at the multimedia event. It's a different shape. I made it on my bench grinder, and I'm going to show it to you guys and see what you guys think. See if we should put it in production.
Wait, now didn't you request a bench grinder to be there as part of your presentation?
I did. I was like,
I hope Mike has a bench grinder.
He better have one. After all I talk about bench grinder.
For some reason, I think if Mike had a bench grinder, he might be missing a couple fingers, dude.
Hey guys, here's a shout out. Everybody that has a shop, share a picture on our Facebook page of your bench grinder.
Yeah. Well, if he doesn't bring it, Daniel, I'll grab my one from the house. We'll take that with.
I think I could do a whole seminar on bench grinding.
That'd be freaking awesome, dude. That'll be awesome.
Be the next one.
That'll be the next one. So real quick, guys, to kind of cap this off and finish it up, I don't want to leave our audience hanging because we talked a little bit about, working a dent that you can only push from one angle. And I just want to drop a technique for you guys out there. This is my tech tip, okay? When you can only work a dent from one angle, like at the front of a door, when you go around, do your knockdown work as if you're trying to pattern the dent in a way that you can see it from the other angle, okay? So knock it down so you're light. If you map the dent and you see the creases, make the creases go in a way that you can see it from the other angle, okay? That is an advanced technique that once you learn how to do it, you'll keep getting better and better. At first, it might not work for you, but little by little, you'll start to understand it, and you will let your knockdown work compensate for the view that you can't push or the angle that you can't actually push or see from. So that's my tech tip, guys.
Yeah. Daniel, I actually have a tech tip today. It comes from Stephen Hamby. So he's another one that follows us regularly and listens to our show. And he hit me up a couple, 2-3 weeks ago, and he had an awesome tech tip for the Magnatech mat. Now, when we were talking about soft paint earlier, now say you're on a car that has soft paint or just painted or just factory paint that's soft and it's leaving suction cup marks. What you do is you get a metal plate, kind of like an outlet cover, and you suction your suction cup to the metal plate, and then you throw your Magnatech mat down on the panel or on the window, and the metal plate sticks to the Magnatech mat, and you can move it all around, and you don't have to worry about leaving marks or suction cup
Nice.
marks on the painted surface.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Stephen Hamby. I know I've been holding on to that tech tip for a while, but I want to give you a shout out for that one. That was a good one.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Right on.
Daniel, you got anything, bro?
Yeah, mine's actually simple. I went to the bicycle store and I bought they're just foam tubes, and I put them on all of my hammers basically. But what I did is I took my VIP, heated it up a little bit, and I slid it alongside the handle of the hammer, and I melted it into this foam thing. So that's where I hold my VIP now. Is it's actually attached to my hammer. So
You're going to have to post a picture of that. I'm not following you.
Yeah. All I seen was like a can of foam adhesion to the hammer.
No, it's just a foam handle. It's just a bicycle handle, and you slide it onto the hammer. So you can choke up on your hammer if you have a longer handle hammer. You can choke up on it. But I just melted the VIP so it sticks.
There is no way
nobody's
going to get a visual of what that is.
Okay.
A bike handle on a hammer, guys. That's that's going to be interesting. Yeah, you need to put a photo of that. And I also want to give the VIP a shout out as well. I didn't mention that in my knockdown choice. Love it. Use it all the time. Daniel mentioned it. It's one of my prime finishing knockdowns. I fool around with that and peak at the same time. Love it. So appreciate it. And the new detachable one that Daniel was talking about is awesome. All right, y'all. What else do we do here? Daniel?
Yeah, hold on. I would just want to give one other thing out to our listeners. If you're going to the Mega Media event, I will have, if you haven't bought one already, I will have doodahs with me. If everything goes as planned, they just shipped today from Ireland. So I should be picking them up on Wednesday at my shop. And I'll have doodahs, and I'll have the Magnatech mat there too, if you guys haven't gotten one already. And there'll be a special sale for those for you guys.
I think I may be able to scrounge up 10 tactical punishers. I think 18-inch ones. I'm not sure though. So it just depends. I'm hoping.
Bring me the head part.
I'm gonna try.
I need an extra one.
All right, y'all. Hey, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate it. And for all y'all, Daniel,
Level up your tools
and join the revolution.
Peace out.